Another Dead Teenager, a Paul Turner Mystery, Book 3. Author, Mark Richard Zubro. Stonewall Inn Mysteries. Narrator, Eric Aust. At Area 10 headquarters, Turner found Fenwick sitting at the table next to the corkboard on the 4th floor. Remnants of a deep dish pizza from Uno's lay on the floor near Fenwick's feet. Fenwick's shirt was open and his tie was undone. He had red tomato sauce on his shirt and on the paper he was reading. "You took your time," Fenwick said. Turner told him what he'd learned. He finished. "So, Jose and Mr. Martin are out. I think we've got a serial killer on our hands. We aren't going to be one of those police departments that refuses to acknowledge we have a serial killer because we're afraid of frightening the public. I think this is a very smart serial killer, but he or she had to start sometime, and judging from the 3 area killings we've got, this is a very angry person. And so, something Rose said when she was talking made sense. The killer is getting even for all the wrongs the world has done to him. And so, Mr. Psychology Professor? And so it started when the person was young. Isn't that in the profiles? It starts from when they were kids. Blessing had that stuff where people lived. How far did he go back? I don't know. They trooped over to Blessing's desk. Turner saw more remnants of pizza around Blessing's computer. I went back as far as I could on anyone who'd been talked to by any officer or detective on the case. What if the killer isn't one of the people we've already talked to? Fenwick asked. In fact, that's pretty likely, isn't it? Blessing said. We could try going through all the people you haven't talked to. Did you want the entire planet covered or just this continent? Fenwick was silent. Blessing said, I got Social Security to give me most of it. When they have addresses only from places people worked? Yeah. How about before that? Can you find out where they came from originally? You mean as kids? Yeah, I guess. Blessing gazed at the page of names he'd been given. Like I said earlier, I could try going through driver's license records, but I'd have to do it state by state. And ask the officials to check each person in each state. Why not start with the last address Social Security gave you? Start in that state for that person. It'll work, provided they didn't move and they were in a job that paid into Social Security, and then try and talk to someone who would have birth records, if they're computerized. Start with Illinois, Turner suggested. Most of those on the list are probably from here. None of the killings were in Illinois until now. The killer started someplace else, so he lives someplace else. Illinois should be easiest. Finish it and then do the rest. Fenwick asked, what if the killer is smart enough to always kill where he doesn't live? We've got to start someplace, Turner said. Besides, the last 3 were here, so he doesn't live here. This is getting kind of complicated, Fenwick said. Can you do it? Turner said to Blessing. Well, hell, we can do it, Blessing said. You've got pictures to look at? Do what? Fenwick asked. From the funeral and the game, Blessing said. I sent people over to the United Center and got copies of the tapes from all the cameras. Friends of mine in the crime lab put together all the crowd shots. You should go over them to see if you recognize anybody. I've got a television and a VCR set up back in the conference room. You can go over the funeral tapes at the same time. Golly gee whiz, thanks, Fenwick said. I didn't have anything else to do tonight. Are you ever inefficient? No, Blessing said. The crowd shots of the game were mercifully few. Cameras were supposed to concentrate on the location on the floor. After half an hour, Turner said, look at this from the second half. He pointed the remote control at the screen and froze her frame. Look, you can see Ben behind the bench, but not Brian. He hit the button that moved the picture 1 frame at a time. These aren't continuous because the camera wasn't on them all the time. Look at this one. Ben is gone. One of the seats 4 rows above them is empty, Fenwick said. Turner sent the frames backward and forward. I can't make out a face. Me neither. But that seat is filled when Pitt is there, but not after he's gone. They checked back through the tapes, but this was the only section where the anomaly appeared. Could have been somebody going to the John, Fenwick said. It could have been the killer, Turner said. Those seats are sold out well in advance. How could the killer get one? Turner shook his head. They began running through the funeral tapes. 3/4 of the way through the first one, Fenwick said, "Hold it! Run it back there." The camera had caught a man in a security uniform with long hair and a droopy mustache, just turning away. "Isn't that the kind of guy Brian described?" "Yes," Turner said. "Looks fake," Fenwick said. "Got to be a disguise." "Not very tall," Turner said. "Can't really tell. Is he sort of chunky?" "Waverly is tall. So is Logan. Riley is maybe that short. He's more muscular. You can't see much of the body. Certainly can't identify anything from this. Maybe we could have it blown up. Some scar or something might show up. In our dreams." Just before midnight, they checked with Blessing on what he had found. Most are from Illinois, the computer expert said. Saved us a lot of time. "Who's from out of state?" And Turner asked Blessing, handed him a list of 17 names. "Where's the list of deaths?" Turner asked. Fenwick rummaged on the large table and brought it to Turner. The three of them gazed down the list. Turner pointed. Drew Riley got his driver's license in Spokane, Washington in 1978. That was 7 years before the killing there, Fenwick said. "You live in our crushed testicle cities?" Turner asked. Blessing looked. "Nope. Not in the underwear cities either." "Anybody else on the list match anywhere?" Turner asked. They looked and shook their heads. "We have one very tenuous connection," Fenwick said. "That does not a killer make. He works across the street from where we found the body. It would be handy for him." "Millward is not handy for him." "Wait," Blessing said. He checked a printout. "I have absolutely no addresses for Riley after 1985. "Sounds odd to me." "Yeah, I was matching addresses we do have. We don't have any for him." "Why not?" "He didn't pay Social Security." "Can you do that?" "Sure, if you've got a job that has a private pension fund." "Not that odd. Hell, many of the teachers in Illinois don't pay Social Security. They have the teachers' retirement system they pay into. So it could mean nothing. But it is odd." "Odd? Worth checking?" Fenwick asked. "Being sort of the size of the guy who gave Brian the note and who appeared on the funeral tape is not what I want to bring to a boss." "Do we talk to him again?" Turner asked. "We could get the commander and the assistant state's attorney back in here. You want to be the one to tell them we're going to question a witness based on this kind of connection?" "Riley works late. I bet he's still there," Turner said. "Maybe I'll stop by on my way home." Blessing and Fenwick shook their heads. "I won't screw up the case," Turner said. "I'm going with," Fenwick said. "No need. Right after we find you sliced up and dead and the commander asks me why I didn't go with you to confront a possible deadly killer, I'll just say Paul said I didn't need to." They drove to the Lumber Street address. Even fewer street lights were working. Turner didn't see a car in front of the new health club, but he remembered that Riley had a hidden parking place. He saw a light in the upper room in front. Turner knocked loudly. No one answered. A gust of wind chilled him as he stood uncertainly in front of the closed door. He banged louder. Fenwick tapped him on the shoulder. "Look." Fenwick pointed across the street to the warehouse. "Isn't that lights on the 3rd floor?" Turner gazed at the darkened structure. "I'm not sure. I better check it out. I'll call for backup on the way. I'll be right back." Fenwick trotted toward the car. The door behind Turner suddenly swung open. Drew Riley's gold eyes gazed down at him inquisitively. "Detective, I'm sorry I was in the John. Took me a while to get down here." He invited him in. They climbed to the second story. Here, newly delivered exercise machines set, some half out of their boxes. A few were assembled. Drew perched on the seat of one machine, and Turner took one across from him. Around them, buckets, paintbrushes, tools, and cleaning rags littered the floor. Turner noted that he was painting bold stripes around the walls, alternating primary colors. "This is going to be the exercise machine room," Riley said. He fiddled with a large brush half covered with red paint. The sitting position pushed Riley's crotch into an even more prominent view than he noticed the first time Turner glanced away. "We had another murder," Turner said. "In Millwood," Riley said. "Yeah, not very pleasant. We've got a very angry person on our hands." "I work out my anger." "You grew up in Spokane, Washington?" Riley gazed at him without changing expression. "You must have looked very hard to find that." "Simple police work. We went back on everybody. You're the only one with a dead teenager in a city you came from." "Oh?" "I couldn't find anybody else with a connection like that. Only you." "And that means..." Turner shut his eyes and listened to the silence of the building. He could barely hear Riley's breathing as he sat there. No sounds penetrated to this room from outside. He wondered if backup had arrived, if Fenwick would find anything across the street, and when he would knock on the door downstairs. Turner opened his eyes. He looked at the two metallic arms that stretched out from the machine at the height of his shoulders. "Killing in Millwood was one of the worst I've ever seen. Took this athlete and ripped him apart, tore great strips of flesh and muscle off the frame." "Awful. Where did you live after Texas? We don't have an address for you since 1985. "I inherited money from my uncle. I told you that the first time you talked to me. Mostly I bummed around, lived here and there." "No need to pay taxes or Social Security if you're living on an inheritance. Where'd you live?" "You've looked up everything else. You can't find that?" "You can save me a bunch of time running it through our computer system. I kind of lived everywhere. 3 suspicious deaths in Texas in the past 9 years involving kids who had their names in the papers as sports heroes." "Sports heroes dying?" "You play sports when you were a kid?" "Didn't get into working out until after college." "Why'd you take a job at the health club?" "Why not? I enjoy it." "We've done a lot of computer checking," Turner said. "Tomorrow we're going to go through the credit card files of everyone we've talked to. We want to see if they were in any of the cities or on the way to or from the cities where any of these athletes died." "You got lots of these cities?" 18 in the last 9 years. We'll have the movements of everybody we talked to outlined and listed before the week is out. We'll track them on this huge chart on the wall. We've got floor-to-ceiling corkboard. We'll be able to surround each murder with the movements of all the people we've talked to. Hard to find out things after all this time. We'll talk to airlines and trains, any credit card transactions. Person could use cash. And bank withdrawals for days and weeks beforehand. We can get bank records. That'll give us dates. We'll concentrate on sports kids who had articles written about them. The ones with testicles crushed or with their underwear missing. Missing? Underwear? Sick. We'll also be blowing up frames from the tapes of their funeral and the crowd at last night's basketball game. The killer may have disguised himself, but we'll find something in the blow-ups that gives him away. You'll never catch the killer. I imagine we will. People can't move totally undetected in a computer-driven society. Take you a while to check all those computer records. We've got a huge task force. Won't take but a day or two. They gazed at each other. Why are you here? Riley asked. Told you, the connection with Spokane. Riley nodded. And Texas. And no addresses. None of which is illegal, Riley smiled. And now you come to my home to see if I hurry up and pack to get out of town? Are you planning to leave town? I wouldn't. We're going to get the killer, whether from credit card records or pictures. Yes, Riley was silent for a long time. It sounds like you will. He ran his hand along the metal arm of the machine. Where were you this morning? Turner asked. Riley did not laugh manically or sneer or bluster or snarl or twist his face in rage. Nor did he stand up and scream. You'll never catch me, copper. He did not make boast about how clever he had been. Instead, he whipped the paintbrush he'd been fiddling with at Turner's head and then lunged at him. Turner banged his head onto one of the arms of the machine as he ducked. He felt droplets of paint on the right side of his face. As Riley dove into him, the machine tilted wildly and crashed to the floor. Entangled in the machine, Turner couldn't get his footing or balance, but it prevented Riley from getting a good grip on him. Riley stepped back and aimed a kick at Turner's nuts. He missed out, caught enough of his midsection to cause Turner to double over. Riley dashed to a pile of weights a few feet away. Turner tried to grab his gun, catch his breath, and get out from the machine. Riley picked up the heavy metal pole that had no weights on the ends. He charged toward Turner, holding the pole like a lance. Turner thrust himself from the machine seconds before the blunt end of the weight would have crashed into his skull. Riley rushed after Turner, using the weight as if it were a quarterstaff, shoving Turner backward and keeping him off balance. Turner managed to get both hands on one end of the weight and pushed Riley back for a moment, but the health instructor was in excellent shape, and Turner found himself giving ground. Turner suddenly let go, rolled under the iron staff, and kicked his legs toward Riley, catching him a solid blow on his left knee. Riley staggered, tipped over a bucket of orange paint, drove the left end of the weight bar into the floor to keep himself from falling. Turner thought he heard pounding on the door downstairs. Riley abruptly lifted his head to listen and banged his right temple against an outthrust hand grip. Turner leaped at him. The couple of seconds he was dazed gave Turner time to handcuff Riley to one of the machines. Breathing heavily, Riley tried to break the hold the cuffs had on him. Turner moved slowly back, watching Riley drag the machine halfway across the room. Turner had his gun out and trained on his prisoner when Fenwick popped his head in the door. When the backup arrived downstairs, they assigned them to keep everybody out except the commander and the state's attorney, both of whom showed up in less than half an hour. In that time, Turner and Fenwick touched as little as possible and talked with Riley not at all, except to read him his rights. The two detectives were determined not to taint any possible evidence or to screw up the paperwork process. The swirl of the next few hours' activity was finally followed by a quiet moment in the interrogation room at the station. Riley and his attorney sat with Turner and Fenwick as the first hints of dawn rose over the lake. No one had spoken for a while after Turner had asked a simple question. Why? Riley rubbed his hand slowly across the bruise on his forehead. He sighed. "Will you listen?" Turner nodded. Riley nodded as his lawyer repeated his warnings about incriminating himself. He told a story. "I grew up wild as a kid. Nobody could do anything with me. I kept an army of social workers busy. I sold more drugs in third grade than most dealers do in a lifetime. Twice, older kids almost killed me. I got beaten up by half the adults who tried to control me. I learned to fight. I was a small kid, but I was so tough that nobody got into my butt in any of those homes. I learned about sex, but girls weren't too interested in a shrimpy little hoodlum. I sat in some corner and beat off looking at Playboy magazines. So I was living with this out-of-it older couple for a few months. I was just 16, but still in ninth grade, when I screwed up a drug deal with a guy on the high school football team. He decided to get revenge. One of the high school cheerleaders asked me out. Most popular and beautiful girl at the high school. I was stupid. I never figured out why she asked me. I was in a haze for days before the big date. She picked me up in her car. I was so proud of myself. Never had many dates with girls. Hell, I had few friends, male or female. Mostly, I had fights. I was a secretive, nerdy criminal. The date was perfect. We went to dinner and dance, and afterwards, she drove us out to Lover's Lane. I had an erection all the way out there. I couldn't believe my luck. When she had the car parked, I sort of reached over. She laughed. And the passenger side door opened. It was her boyfriend, who I'd screwed over. His buddies from the team were there too. I think originally they were just going to scare me, but it got out of hand. They tickled me. They took my clothes. I started crying, and they laughed harder. I started hitting the nearest one. He was a big star on the basketball team. He tried to hold my arms, but I kicked and screamed. Things got ugly. Riley shook his head. They raped me over and over. I never reported it to anyone. Telling would have made it worse. I wasn't sure who all of them were or who fucked me. I thought I was going to die because I shit blood for days. That night as I crawled home without my clothes, I vowed I'd get revenge. I couldn't then. I was too screwed up. But I formed a plan to get even. I changed. I got off drugs. I studied in high school. I had to be smarter than them. It took me 5 years to get through college. I tried dating a few girls, but I found I couldn't perform unless I got violent. All those years I worked out and planned, I thought about getting revenge on those who attacked me. I went back to Spokane, and they were all fat and old. The guy who started it had been killed in a drug deal. None of them had an athletic career. Killing them would mean nothing. I figured I could even the score on high school stud athletes. First, I tried robbing them or wrecking their cars, even making obscene calls. Minor stuff. Then one time things got out of hand, and I killed one. That night I went to a bar, got a girl, went home, and found I could perform with no problem. 2 nights later, I couldn't get it up. Figured it out. I could have sex as long as I killed some stud motherfucker first. I decided to get revenge on everyone who hurt me in my life. Maybe not the real people, but stud athletes were in large supply. Turner got done with the major parts of the paperwork just before the 10 o'clock press conference. He and Fenwick glanced in mirrors in the John before they went out. Neither decided to clean up much. Let them see tired, hard-working cops. They evaded the sillier questions, answered as much as they could of the more sensible, and let the commander handle most of the PR problems. When Paul got home, the house was quiet. The boys were at school. He'd been up all night, but he was too keyed up to try and begin catching up on his sleep. He changed into jeans and a sweater and threw on a jacket. The wind was out of the north and howling. The first flurries of winter were predicted for that afternoon. He stopped at Rose's. He found her on the phone complaining to the alderman about potholes on the street. After Rose hung up, she patted his arm, insisted he eat a meal, and let him tell her as much as he wanted about the case. After half an hour, she insisted he go see Ben. Paul had planned to do this anyway. He walked down to Ben's service station. As he passed Jenny's flower shop, he stepped in for a minute and picked up a dozen daffodils and a dozen red roses. Outside the shop, Myra was bent over a small car. He heard bangs from the engine. She looked up, saw him, smiled, and straightened up. Heard you were on television. Congratulations. Boss is in the back, whistling. You must make him happy. She noted the flowers. Excellent touch. I like it when you follow my advice. He's in his office. Paul made his way to the back. He found Ben peering at a computer screen. In one grease-covered hand, he had a stack of bills, and the other a black felt-tip pen. Ben looked up from his work and smiled at Paul. The flowers almost got crushed between them as they embraced. Paul felt one of Ben's hands stray from his back to the door. It shut with a thump. They held each other tightly and kissed passionately. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.